What's up, guys? It's Matt Mrozik, aka MVM3897, with a second work in progress on my Zeong. This is more of a tutorial than it is a work in progress. I've done this before, but this is a good opportunity to do it again. I'm just going to show you guys how I clean up my resin, get rid of gates, pour marks, clean up my panel lines and stuff like that. So I've got my tools laid out here. I think you'll find that all the tools I use are exactly the same for cleaning up plastic except for one, and that would be the Sharpie. I use that to just kind of go around and mark all the spots that are obvious to me that are rough and that will need some sanding or work. So I'll pick out a piece here that has that may have a couple of trouble areas, and I'll show you how I clean it up. So I'm going to use this side skirt as an example. I haven't done anything to it yet, so you can see it's still got the gate, or you can call it a gate, pour mark, I don't know what you want to call it. And also, you may not be able to see it on camera, but this edge right here is a little rough. This bevel needs some work. Let's see what else. Same on this side. Nothing too major. Like I mentioned before, the casting on this kit is actually really pretty good. So cleanup's been pretty easy so far. So the first step I do is I take my Sharpie and I go in and mark up all the areas that need work. So like where the gate is or the pour mark, I'm going to go around, just kind of color all the way around it. And for the people who ask me, do you have to use red? No, you don't have to use red. You can use any color you want. This is just the color I have. So that's an obvious spot that needs work. As I'm looking at this piece, this bevel right here, it's got a little slag. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it up. And you might be able to see it a little bit in camera. Just right along this edge is a little bit rough. So I'm going to mark the whole bevel, because I'm just going to kind of work on the whole thing, make sure it looks good. And now I'm going to color the bevel. I'm going to color both sides of it. So the side of the skirt and the actual bevel. And so when I have a piece that needs a lot of work, it's a lot of times it's all one color. It's all been colored red or whatever. This bevel needs just a teeny tiny work, so I'm going to do the same thing. I color the edge. And what this is going to do is act as a sanding guide. This spot feels a little rough, so I'm constantly feeling over the piece to see what needs work, because sometimes you can't see it. It's just something you feel. So so far so good. I think that's it. So now I'm going to go ahead and start cleaning this up. So the first step I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sprue cutters, these guys right here, and I'm going to cut this gate off. I'm not going to cut all the way to the surface, because resin will have a tendency to crack or chip out. So I'm going to cut it as close as I can without damaging the piece. And there we are. So the next tool I'm going to use is a file. I just recently bought this big flat file for working on really large flat surfaces. It's pretty rough, but you get the sanding marks out later on with finer sandpaper. So I'm going to use my trusty diamond file, and I was using these guys here. It's like a set I got from I don't know, Harbor Freight. I think I paid like $5 or something. But I find that the diamond tends to clog less. So I'm just going to go through, and I use my finger. So I'm using my pointer as a guide, and I just kind of run the file right along it. And since this is on its own bevel, I try to make sure it's nice and flat. And as I get closer, where I had marked with marker is going to start to go away. So as I get down closer, that red marker that I used is going to show me whether or not I'm flat or not. So you can see there, starting to get just to the edge where the marker is. Keep going. And I'm not going to sand it all the way, because I'm going to use a finer sanding stick to get the rest of it. So that's pretty good. Now, right here you can see I still have some red there. And now I'm going to sand this facade. So whenever you're working on a bevel, you want to sand all the facades if you can. It just makes sure that they're nice and even and flat. And you can see there that the red is going to start going away. And once that red is gone, you know that that little area has been removed. So we're going to go, keep sanding, keep sanding. And again, I'm just going to leave a little bit there because I'm going to hit it with a finer sanding stick. And I'm going to hit this side just a little bit too, even though I don't see that, it needs it. Okay, so we're getting there. And there's a little facade right here too. I'm going to hit that. Hopefully this is in camera. And for the most part, we're clean. Actually, this needs to come down just a little, and it's harder to see on camera than it is in person, but you kind of have to compare the angles and make sure you're standing at the right angle and everything. But I could see that my angle is off a little bit, so I'm going to come in and just finish that up. Now for the most part, that gate is gone. So now I'm going to refine that with some of my homemade sanding sticks. This is 400 grit sandpaper. I have a tutorial on how to make these. It's really simple. You just take 400 wet dry sandpaper and you glue it around a popsicle stick. And this is going to get rid of all my file marks and make sure that that gate is completely gone. Sand this facade. And you see a little bit of red. Hopefully you can see it. Still a little bit there. We're going to sand until it's gone. And we're looking good. So I got a little bit left here. And again, I think my angle's off just a little bit. This skirt has a little bit of a curve to it. So it's not quite as simple as just sanding it flat. See a little bit of red right there? It's bugging me. So I think I need to sand a little bit more of an angle. And it's not getting there quite the way I want. This is actually a good example to show you guys on. So now what I'm going to take my blade, my X-Acto blade, and I'm just going to kind of come here and I'm going to just scrape it. Not sure this is in focus or not, but we're going to try it. And that's getting there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark it one more time. This gate was actually in a really good spot to show you guys because it's not a simple one to get rid of. Simply because this skirt's got a little curve to it. So I'm going to mark it up again. And instead of sanding, I'm going to use my blade. And I'm just going to scrape it nice and flat. Keeping my blade flat. Once that red is gone, I know I'm flat. I'm going to do this side again. And don't worry about leaving any scrape marks or anything, because we're going to take care of all that in the last step. You see the red going away? We know we're flat. Same thing with this little corner right. Same with this little corner right here. We're going to scrape it. And I'm at a pretty severe angle. You want your blade at 45 or more. If it's too straight up and down, you're not going to get the effect you want. In the last step, I'm going to scrape this red, all this red, and just watch it go away until it's flat. See, got a little bit right there. This is bugging me, so we're going to keep going at it. I think if I hit it one more time coming this way, we'll be good. Okay. I think we're good. That little spot right there, I'm going to see if I can sand it out my last step, but if not, a little putty's going to take care of it. So that takes care of the gate. Now this bevel that I marked here, all I'm going to use for that is my X-Acto knife. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scrape this whole side. And you'll see where it needs a little work. You see right here, it's a little bit of wavy. It's a little bit of slag. Not bad. This is very minor. Now, one thing I got to say about guys who work resin, and there are a lot of guys who are a lot better at this than I am. There's a guy, Bono. He goes by Bono. You should look him up. He is probably, in my opinion, the best resin worker out there as far as perfection goes. He'll go in, and I'm noticing when I'm scraping that there's a little low spot right here, a teeny tiny low spot right there. He'll basically cover this whole thing in putty and then sand it smooth. I don't do that. I don't have the patience for that. And quite frankly, after you flat coat everything, you can't see it anyway. If you're doing a gloss coat, you may see that kind of thing, but if it's flat, you won't. So now that that edge is straight, I'm going to go through and I'm going to just clean this up. And you notice right there, I got a little inconsistency in the red. So if the red comes off nice and straight like this, like it did there, you don't have any issues. When it's like this, you got these little kind of dips and stuff, you know you got a couple issues. See right there, I scraped, and now you see all those little pits right there. I can get rid of them just by doing this. And there they go. Come over here and do this. This is a messy job. Resin is a messy material to work with. I actually prefer it over plastic. I don't know, something about it. Maybe because I used to work on cars, it reminds me of working with Bondo. It's kind of got the same consistency as hardened Bondo. I find it much easier to sand and sculpt with, or not sculpt, I'm not a sculptor, but modify. So that's pretty good. So that bevel's taken care of. I do got to take care of this little area right here that I marked. So let me do that real quick. Get that one away. That one away. And we're going to take care of this bevel. Now normally to do this piece, if I wasn't doing a video and I wasn't trying to explain what I was doing, it would have been done by now. It would have been all sanded and, you know, everything been finalized. And I use my blade a lot. I use my, especially on anything flat, I use it a lot to clean up resin. I don't know. I just find that you get a real nice straight edge. Don't worry about that right there. This line right here, where the red is. See if this will focus. It's straight, so that lets me know that the bevel is straight. If it was all wavy and stuff, then I know I'd have a problem. But since that line is straight, we're good to go. And this was a little rough right here, so I'm going to get that. Again, just take your time. Hit it from different angles to get what the results you need. And this was a little rough spot, so we're going to hit that. And you see all those little pits and stuff? I felt that. I didn't see it. I could feel it. Gone. Okay, so now I got the bevels cleaned up. I got the gate taken care of. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sand it. I'm not going to use any of the sanding sticks because, well, what the hell? I'm going to use some sanding sticks. In one of my videos last year, a couple years ago, I mentioned that I don't use the soft sanding sticks because you don't get a flat surface. Well, I've been finding that on resin, to just do the initial sanding, they work really well because I'm not worried about getting it super flat. So I've been using, these ones in particular are really nice because they don't clog up as bad. It's from Stevens International. I get these at Hobbytown. They're kind of expensive. It's about $2 a stick. But like, this is an 800 grit sanding stick, and I've been using it for over a year, and it works awesome. So the goal is to make sure you don't have anything lower than like a 600 grit sanding scratch in your resin. So what I used to do is I used to do 400, but I've been finding that my sanding scratches have been showing through, so I've been bumping it up to 600. If you go 600 or higher, you'll be good. So I'm just going to take the sanding stick, and I'm just going to give it a real quick once over. This does two things. This will also bring out more trouble areas that you may have missed initially. You'll see. And the color of resin really depends on that too. This is this kind of yellow resin. The white resin, I'll tell you what, it's a nightmare. If you're sanding, you can't see anything because the dust matches the color of the resin, so you can't see if there's any mistakes. You'll notice when you're sanding that the dust will like collect in low spots. It'll collect in the panel lines and the rivet details and stuff like that. So if there's a low spot or scratch in the resin that's not supposed to be there, the dust will collect in that area, and you know you have some work to do. This piece is pretty good. We hit every little area. This, like I said, does two things. It just kind of flattens it out. Also puts a nice little scratch in it to give your primer something to stick to. Because you do want to, you want to have something, a really good surface that your paint to stick to. People are always asking me, how's your paint get so smooth? Well, the first step is right here. Lots and lots of sanding. I actually could probably sand more than I do on my kits. I typically go through one round of primer, sand it, and a second round of primer. That's usually about it. I could do more, but by the time you get paint, decals, and everything on, little itty bitty things are not going to show up. So that's about all I can do with the sanding stick. So now I'm going to come in with some. This is 600 grit wet sandpaper. This has been used quite a bit, so it's got some. It's not quite as gritty. It's not quite as rough. So I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to go in there and finalize it. Again, just hit every area. Be real careful on small areas like this that you don't sand too much, because you'll round that detail off. Right now it's real nice and sharp. If you sand too much, you'll round it off and that detail will go away. It won't go away, but it'll be soft. So just make sure you just hit it real lightly. And then fold your paper as necessary to get in all small areas. So right now I got to fold it over. Get between this area and this area. And I can just tell by looking at this is looking pretty good. Now we're going to hit the back side, even though you don't really see it. Just going to give it a little once over. Like this. That's it. So this piece has been cleaned up. It's ready for a soak in purple power. And that's pretty much the steps. So let me show you real quick how I do my panel lines. Like I mentioned in my first work in progress, I always rescore my panel lines. And I just find, especially on the 1/100 scale kits, I have to do that in order to get a good panel line at the end, because by the time you add primer, paint, clear coat, a lot of times that panel line is gone. So on a resin kit like this is the back of the head. Before I do anything, I'll go through, and I'm not using Dymo tape or anything, because quite frankly that stuff is expensive and it doesn't stick very well. I use the back side of my blade, preferably a blade that's not brand new, something's been used a little bit, and I just go within the line, and hopefully you can see it. So I'm just, even though this is pretty defined, I'm gonna go through and rescore it anyway, and I just real lightly drag it, and this is deep enough that my blade won't slip. That's why I do this before I do any sanding, because if I start sanding, I could take some of that panel line away, and then it won't be deep enough for my blade to slide into and not slip. I'm barely putting any pressure. I'm letting the blade do all the work. I've tried the I don't know, the panel line tools like the scores and stuff. I just find they're too sharp. I like the backside of a blade because it's square. It's not a V shape, so it's not going to dig into the material, and that goes for plastic too. It's not going to dig into the material and get stuck. And a panel line should not be a V-shaped anyway. It should be squares where two panels meet, so it should be a V-shaped trough. This may be out of focus, but I'm going to get it there. So I'm just going through, I'm going around real quick. This does take some time, but it is well worth it in the end when you're going to do your panel lines in the end, because they are so much easier to do. Now when I did the Sazabi, I didn't have to rescore them because Neograde just kicks ass, and their panel lines were perfect. They were nice and sharp, super defined, and it was a 1/60th scale kit, so they were pretty big. So I went around that a few times, just super light. To check my work, I'll sand it. And remember how I said that the dust fills up panel lines and stuff? Well, this will show you if you've done a good job. So let's see if it'll focus. You can see there, got a nice defined panel line. You can see the white edge where the white went in, or where the dust went into the panel line. It tells me I did a good job. If you made a mistake, it'll show up right away because the dust will show it. If your blade slipped, it'll show it because the dust will be collected in there. So that's how I rescore my panel lines. No tape or anything. Yeah, that's a pretty good sense of what it looks like. Let's do this one real quick. I'm going to sand this a little bit. Again, this is 600 grit sandpaper, so let's see, focus. It's pretty defined, but I'm going to do it anyway because, like I said, by the time you get all your paint layers on there, it's going to fill up. So I'm going to end this video, guys. We're hitting over 20 minutes. Hopefully YouTube will let me upload this. I think I can do 20-minute videos. So like I said, this really isn't a work in progress. This is more of a tutorial on cleaning up resin pieces. But that's really it. That's all there is to it, guys. Lots of sanding. Use that Sharpie or any kind of marker to show your work, because you can't see it. You can't see what you're doing unless you have a contrasting color in there. And we're going to sand it again, and we're good to go. Alright, well, thanks for looking again, guys. I'm going to work on this tonight, get some more parts cleaned up, and I hope to have another video for you guys. In the next couple days, I'll do a pinning video. I know Jim asked to show how to pin and stuff. Again, it's not a super hard process. Once you've done it a few times, it gets pretty easy, and we'll go from there. Thanks for looking. Bye.